Before this starts, I announced in the last video that there was a new episode of the Hoopscast out, but it actually had not been released due to some technical issues, but it is out now. Me and Mojo did a Who He Play For competition, and it was probably the most fun podcast that we've recorded so far, so go check that out. Link will be in the description. Also, if you enjoy this video, there are many more like it on the channel already, with many more like it to come in the future, so subscribe if you enjoy, and also drop a like. It really helps me out, and I really appreciate it. Today we are talking about probably the most underrated what if in NBA history, because yes, LeBron James was almost drafted by the Memphis Grizzlies. LeBron has had maybe the most interesting career in NBA history. It's had so many peaks and valleys, so many moments of triumph and failure, and because of that, I think he has one of the most fun careers to study. Because of the many different storylines throughout LeBron's career, there are many what ifs that have stemmed from it. And because of that, how the Grizzlies almost drafted LeBron is often swept under the rug, or even forgotten about. But there are two reasons for that. One, it's partially that most people are unaware of the trade that almost made that happen, and two, because, well, it's the Grizzlies. No one really cares about them. But today, I wanted to talk about how close the Grizzlies were to landing one of the greatest players in the history of the game, the trade that ended up screwing them over, and do some hypothesizing about what LeBron's career would have looked like if he was drafted by the Memphis Grizzlies. This all started with a trade made back in 1997. The Vancouver Grizzlies were a new franchise to the NBA, and they were looking for some established talent to create a respectable product. The move involved Otis Thorpe, who was a 35-year-old center on the Detroit Pistons, heading to the Grizzlies in exchange for their 2003 pick with a number 1 protection on it. The tragedy of this was that the 35-year-old Thorpe only played 47 games for the Grizzlies, after averaging just 11 points and 7 rebounds, with the Grizzlies going 13-34 in those 47 games. So much for being a respectable product. The Grizzlies actually went on to trade Thorpe to the Kings for Bobby Hurley and Michael Smith. Bobby averaged 4 points on 37% shooting in 27 games, and Michael Smith averaged 5 points and 7 rebounds in 20 minutes a game for the Grizzlies for 2 seasons. So that is a pick that would eventually be number 2 in one of the greatest draft classes in NBA history, being traded for essentially 2 guys who averaged 5 points per game. It's one of the worst trades in NBA history. Fast forward to 2003, and the now Memphis Grizzlies have a 28-54 record, and they have the 5th best odds at the number 1 pick in the draft. And they were hoping to land that pick so they didn't look stupid for trading it for a nearly retired player. And spoiler alert, they looked really stupid for trading that pick for a nearly retired player. The pick would likely end up in the hands of the Detroit Pistons, who had just made an Eastern Conference Finals appearance. Despite having the 5th best odds, the Grizzlies/Pistons pick ended up going into the top 3, and the new executive of the Grizzlies, Jerry West, could only sit and watch the fate of the franchise.
The 2nd pick goes to the Memphis Grizzlies.
So on top of failing to land the generational talent that was LeBron James, they now got to sit back and watch the Pistons draft one of Carmelo Anthony, Darko Milicic, Chris Bosh, or Dwayne Wade. Of course, the dumbasses went with Darko Milicic, but this was still crushing for the Grizzlies, because after a 28-54 season, they had no pick to show for it, when they were that close to landing the number 1 overall pick and drafting LeBron James. So LeBron literally fell 1 lottery ball short of landing in Memphis, instead of heading to the hometown Cleveland Cavaliers. Yes, I know he was born in Akron, but they say Cleveland is his hometown team, so whatever. Him ending up in Cleveland is actually pretty convenient for the backstory of LeBron James, and it's because of that that some people feel that this lottery was rigged. I don't necessarily agree, but one of the NBA's newer franchises landing the number 1 prospect ever doesn't really seem like the ideal situation for the NBA. That prospect landing in his hometown city with a franchise that actually has some history was probably a better look for the league. I don't agree that it was rigged, but I can certainly see why people would view it that way. A similar situation happened in 2008 with Derrick Rose going to the hometown Chicago Bulls. But now let's talk about the potential changes that could have happened from this actually, well, happening. The Grizzlies get the #1 pick and they draft LeBron James. What team is he actually joining? Well, it is definitely a far better one than the team that he joined in Cleveland. The Grizzlies in 2003 had a young roster with some veteran presence and a lot of upside. They had a young Pau Gasol who was a fantastic offensive big man. He would go on to make multiple All-Star teams and win 2 championships with Kobe on the Lakers. They had a young Mike Miller who was one of the best shooters in the NBA who would go on to average 19 points per game 3 years later, while hitting 40% of his threes on 7 attempts per game, a 25-year-old Shane Battier who was a great 3-and-D player, as well as some solid veteran role players in Bonzi Wells, James Posey, and most importantly, White Chocolate himself, Jason Williams. This roster on its own was not amazing by any means, but it was a roster that was begging to be great with just the addition of a superstar. By comparison, when you look at the Cavaliers team that LeBron joined in his rookie year, they had young Carlos Boozer, Zydrunas Ilgauskas, and Ricky Davis. In Memphis, LeBron would have immediately had a go-to pick-and-roll partner with Gasol, as well as 2 very good shooters on the perimeter in Mike Miller and Shane Battier, and a secondary playmaker to play off of in White Chocolate. The reason LeBron was eventually forced to leave Cleveland was because of the lack of help that they had there. Now, this Grizzlies team certainly wasn't the Big 3 Heat, but it was a very good team. LeBron would have had a reliable perennial all-star to play off of, as well as multiple shooters on the perimeter and a guy that he could get passes from himself. And even more importantly than their current roster, the Grizzlies were being managed by Jerry West, one of the greatest executives in NBA history. This wasn't going to be the shit management that he got in Cleveland. He likely would have done a great job providing help for LeBron. And you might be thinking, how is a team that just won 28 games good? Well, even without LeBron on their roster in the 2003-2004 season, the Memphis Grizzlies won 50 games. So I think by LeBron's second year, this Grizzlies team would have been a contender. There's even a chance that LeBron would have actually faced the Kobe and Shaq Lakers in his first year. That would have been a hell of a storyline. But what ramifications would this have for the overall league and not just LeBron and the Grizzlies? Well, the first thing that stands out is Pau Gasol is probably never traded in 2008. I can't see any reason why he would get traded. LeBron and Gasol would have at the very least made the Grizzlies a consistent high seed in the Western Conference, and they probably would have even won a championship or 2. So that means that it's very likely to keep Kobe from winning his final 2 rings, or at least it prevents him from doing it on the Lakers, because without Gasol, the Lakers probably fall short and Kobe leaves. He demanded a trade in 2007, and without the Lakers getting Gasol, even though things were looking a bit up before they got him, it's very likely that he eventually does not stick with the Lakers. This also very likely means that LeBron does not go to the Miami Heat in 2010. Because while yes, this roster was certainly not a super team, it would have been a very good and consistent team. This means that Dwayne Wade only retires with 1 ring, assuming that this wouldn't somehow interfere with that, because I believe by 2006 the Grizzlies could have been in the finals. And I'm certain there would be many more completely different changes from what we have now, like, for instance, the Cleveland Cavaliers. They're now going to have, even if they have the 2nd pick, that's going to drastically change the future of their franchise. They might select Darko, which would be a very Cleveland Cavaliers thing to do, but they also might take Carmelo Anthony, Chris Bosh, or Dwayne Wade. The whole order of the picks in that amazing draft class would be completely shaken up. Hell, Dwayne Wade might not win his ring because he doesn't even end up on the Miami Heat. That also changes where Shaq is traded. Where Shaq is traded could change what the Lakers get back. What the Lakers get back could actually prevent Kobe from wanting to be traded. It's all up in the air. What's really sad about this is while you might initially turn your nose to the idea of LeBron being a Memphis Grizzly, it probably would have made for a better career. LeBron wasted so many years in Cleveland not having proper help. Now he would be joining a 50-win team with one of the best executives in the history of the game. The Memphis Grizzlies very well could have won multiple championships with LeBron joining their roster. This was a good team that just needed a superstar player to join them to make them a great team. This what if has got to be one of the most underrated ones in the history of the NBA because I don't even think most fans are aware of how close LeBron was to being in Memphis and how much that would really change his career and the NBA in general. I almost wish I had the effort to do a whole what if video like I used to do on these, but unfortunately I don't think I have another one of those in me. However, if you do want to see a what if where this kind of applies, I did strip the Grizzlies of Gasol in this what if scenario where I did one on what if Dirk was drafted by the Sixers, but LeBron still does go to the Grizzlies, so if you would like to see how that kind of shapes out, I did do that a while ago. Be forewarned, I used Mike Korzemba's background music for his what ifs in that video, and for whatever reason I thought that would be okay. It's not. It was also just cringy, so I apologize for that. It's an old ass video, but if you do want to check that out, I will probably put it in a card above. Outside of the music, I do think it is a decent video. But yeah, that is how the Grizzlies came one ping pong away from landing one of the greatest talents in the history of basketball and completely reshaping the history of the game. That's the end of this video. Please be sure to like and subscribe for more NBA content like this, and cue the outro music.